Can Peter Parker win Total Drama Island? This was another commission requested by John. I will be using the spectacular Spider-Man version of Peter Parker since I watched 26 episodes thinking this was the version they wanted and realized they didn't actually specify. The biggest hurdle wasn't even thinking about which version of him to use, it was actually about which team he'd be on. I'm not gonna bore you with all the details on how I came to the conclusion, but I will have Peter on the killer bass. Peter gets onto the island and introduces himself just for Duncan to smile as he sees someone to bully, tripping him on the way by. Harold says that he hates guys like that. In the future, Duncan will be serving guys like them. Peter plays devil advocate, saying it's just first day jitters. In confessional, Peter says he could have dodged that. You see, he has a lot of unique gifts, but maybe it'd be better not to say any of them as this is probably being aired out to the world. Hey Aunt May, I'll bring the money home for us. Hope you're doing okay. Harold asks what his favorite subject is. Him personally, he likes chemistry. Peter says he is a fan of robotics. At home, he built a web shooter, prototype that simulates spider webs. Harold says, wow, kinda like that one weird spider guy in New York. What was his name again? Duncan says, Spider-Man. Dude is cool. You two are wasting your time if you think he'd like you two dorks. Chris tells them to hush it. Peter, Harold, Duncan, you three are on the killer bass. Duncan says, perfect, like shooting two nerds in a barrel. While they're eating at the cafeteria, Harold says not to worry. If Duncan tries anything, he will hit Duncan with his nunchucks. Peter says, wow, I'd be terrified if I was him. In confessional, Peter says that bullies aren't exactly anything new to him, but back home he always got to stay. It'll certainly be different allowing those same bullies the power to vote him out if they want. Things may be harder than he thought, but Duncan seems to like Spider-Man. Peter tells Duncan that he thinks they got off on the wrong foot, only for Duncan to say he has 3 seconds to explain why he's here before he sends him home in his backpack. Peter says, hey, no need for hostility, I actually work for a news station and I have a few good pics of Spider-Man. Duncan says, no way, really? Peter says, yeah, and all I want in return is for you to stop bullying me and Harold. Duncan threatens Peter, saying if he's lying, he can easily kill him. Peter asks what he gains from lying, and Duncan says, good point, fine, bring me photos of Spider-Man by tonight and we'll have a deal. Chris announces the first challenge to be jumping off of an 1,000-foot cliff. Peter in confessional says that he's taken his fair share of falls, but he's not exactly used to taking one from this high up. He thinks that he can still make this work, but it'll be hard to sell. Selling nothing, of course, because he's just a normal human teenager like the rest of them. Peter grips the side of the cliff and places a web on it, gripping onto it before swinging down, letting go once he feels the web halt his movement to save levels. He just hopes that none of the gophers see it. The gophers have the same people jump as in canon, but Heather looks up and sees the web, figuring out that someone here may have cheated in the challenge but doesn't know who. Peter tries to tell the other bass they have to work together, but it falls on deaf ears and they ultimately lose. Duncan pulls Peter aside and tells him to give him the photos. Peter hands some to him, and Peter in confessional says that these were rejects from the Bugle. There's no way that anyone will accept these. That is, until Duncan says, wow, these are badass originals. You and Harold are good with me. Also, don't tell anyone about this. Last thing they need is to think I'm some superhero obsessed weirdo. Peter says his secret is safe with him. While in the chow hall, they all talk about who should leave. Peter says that the loss falls upon the leader, but Courtney tries to onto other people, only for Ezekiel to chime in by saying that he doesn't understand why they lost. The Gophers have 6 girls. He then digs a deeper grave for himself by saying guys are just naturally stronger and smarter than girls are. So at elimination, Ezekiel is voted out, with Peter in confessional saying he doesn't even think some of the stupidest bullies in his school would agree with that one. In episode 3, Peter in confessional says that he can't stand waking up early, especially when it's 3 hours earlier than he's used to. Chris tells him that they're going to be running around the island, and if they don't make it by dinner, they won't eat. Peter in confessional says, yeah, I really hate waking up early. This is why he decided to take Spanish so he could get out of gym class. He ends up making it around first, and Peter in confessional says he wasn't thinking that he'd be first, but he hasn't really raced since he got got into high school. Chris tells him that he can eat the feast, but his spidey sense triggers, causing him to avoid eating. Eva asks if he's hungry, and Peter says just to eat. He's used to getting his lunches taken from him anyway. Eva says that's sad. Tyler makes it in, and Peter says he's glad he can make it. Tyler says he really hates waking up early. Courtney says yeah, she hopes he hates it because he just costed them the challenge. Tyler says to cut him some slack, he's not a complete failure. Duncan says, yeah, you kind of are. Tyler says, fine, enjoy your food. He leaves the room and Peter follows after him. Tyler asks what he wants and Peter says he used to be like him too. He was a complete loser before, but then he made a good group of friends. He thinks that Tyler has talent, he's just not exactly knowledgeable of them yet. Tyler says, yeah, and what could he possibly be good at if not for sports? Peter says lots of things potentially. You know, he used to think that he'd be the first man on the moon as a kid. Tyler asks why he can't be the first man on the moon, and Peter says that he's about 50 years too late for that. The point is, you don't really know what you can be until you you find it. Tyler thanks Peter and Peter says anytime. During the next part of the challenge where competitors must stay up for as long as possible, Peter's exhausted by the 24-hour mark. He looks over and sees Eva drop the MP3 player. Heather goes to grab it only for Peter to grab it first, and he tells Heather thanks for trying to get it for her, but he can handle this. Heather in confessional says that something isn't right with that kid. Peter hands the MP3 player to Eva, and Eva gauges whether he stole it or not, but ultimately stops and thanks him. The Bass ultimately end up still losing, and at elimination it's between Harold, Courtney, and Tyler. In the end, Tyler is eliminated, but as he's going, Peter hands him a business card telling him that if he's interested, could always use another photographer or lab assistant. Tyler thanks him before leaving. In confessional, Peter says that he didn't know what he was doing, but seeing Tyler leave like that, nowhere to go and nothing to do, it made him want to help him out. What are the chances he actually takes him up on that offer anyway? He's a sports guy, not a chemist. In episode 4, Peter in confessional says he's gone a good 5 or so days since he has had a good night's rest. He could really use some time to himself. Please let this be an easy challenge. Chris tells him that today's challenge is dodgeball. Peter in confessional says great, something he has to be fully conscious of how much effort he uses. What a bad break. In round 1, when picking the contestants competing, Peter says he'll just hang out on the bench. No reason for a scrawny nerd like him to compete, right guys? Eva says, oh no you don't, she saw how he got there first last challenge. Courtney says, yeah, and if we lose, you don't want to be the one getting voted out, right? Peter says, no, I don't. Eva says, great, let's cook us up some gopher. During round 1, Peter dodges balls thrown at him, trying his best not to get swiped by them. Courtney says he's good at dodging, but how about catching something? Peter says, yeah, he guesses that. He stops and catches a ball without looking, everyone being in shock as Peter suddenly realizes and drops it, saying, whoops, butterfingers. Heather in confessional says, no way. Dork boy is hiding some talents. I don't know if he's an Olympian or what, but that kid is secretly a threat. Peter asks if he's out, and Chris says, yeah, you dropped it. Peter says, great, aw man, sorry guys. Courtney rolls her eyes and says he's so dead if they lose. Killer Bass are doing well at first, but Eva gets sideswiped and is out. Eva throwing a ball at Chris in anger. Chris telling her to watch the face, dude. Screaming Gophers win round 1 as a result. In round 2, Courtney tells Peter to get out there, but Peter says he kinda sprained his wrist grabbing the ball. Courtney says they're not through yet. Peter says that he's sure they aren't. Why don't they wake up Duncan? Courtney says fine, you save this team, I may forget about this. The Bass wake up Duncan, and so the Bass have a clear area for victory, with Harold winning it at the end for the Bass. Peter in confessional says it wasn't his best showing, but he just couldn't trust himself not to go all out in his exhausted state. Now he can just get some well-deserved rest. The Gophers vote off Noah for not competing. Episode 5 is the talent show. Peter at first thinks about shooting his webs, noting that it would certainly make an impression, but right now it seems like his best move is to seem like a normal, stupid, useless teenager that would certainly get eliminated. What a terrible balancing act. He's never been one for theater. When Bridget drops a light on Courtney breaking her guitar, Peter says in confessional that Bridget may be the only one performing worse than him. Maybe she's hiding a secret power too, eh? The Bass end up winning thanks to Harold, and Justin is eliminated on the Gophers. Episode 6 has the campers all needing to go out into the woods and remaining there until the morning, where they'll go back to camp. This challenge is so lame, but alas. Peter notices Katie and Sadie hanging back, and Peter says, great idea, we should gather blueberries. He calls out to the others and they all get blueberries for the team for the long night ahead. Katie and Sadie say in confessional that this is the absolute worst thing that could have happened to them in this episode. Those blueberries were for them. Peter helps out the others during the night, Bridget still burning their tent to the ground, and they all have to sleep in the rain now. On the Screaming Gophers, they get halted by a bear, and so in the morning the Bass make it first and the Gophers make it second. At elimination, the Gophers decide to eliminate Izzy for dressing as a bear and scaring all of them. In episode 7, Peter would say his fear is not to save someone in time. This brings the mood down a bit, but Heather in confessional says he throws challenges, he wants to help people, and he's unassuming. He has to be some kind of secret hero or something. He's not a normal teenager like, well, okay, none of us are normal, but relative to us, he's a whole new crazy. Chef holds Courtney over a large diving board, and Chris says, here's the deal, hero. We're gonna drop Courtney into this vat of jelly, which Courtney hates. If you let her drop, you both earn a point and the win for your team. Help her and you lose, and you have to hope for Courtney to do it on her own accord. Duncan tells Peter to help her, but Harold says not to. If he does, they'll lose for sure. Peter apologizes, saying he has to do this. He begins to climb, only to dodge out of the way as Chef drops a bowling ball that barely misses Peter. Peter asks what he's doing, and Chef says it wouldn't be a challenge if he just had to climb up. Peter in confessional says Chris is conniving, but he ironically helped him out. Time to see if he really is a theater kid. Peter begins climbing up once again before reaching near the top stop and telling Chef it's over, let Courtney go. Chef says nah, beat me if you want her safe. Peter says your funeral. He rushes in and Chef grabs him before throwing him off of the diving board into the jelly, Courtney landing in shortly after. Peter says he's sorry, but they won. Courtney says we won? We won? That's your excuse for failing me? You're so lucky that we aren't going to elimination, otherwise you'd be dead. Peter in confessional asks why nothing can go the way he wants. At elimination, Gwen is trying to convince Trent to vote for Heather, but Trent points out that Heather got them a point. We have to reward good behavior. Heather ends up getting Beth, Lindsay, and Owen to vote for Lashana. Gwen, Cody, and Lashana vote for Heather, and Trent votes for Lashana, meaning Lashana leaves. In episode 8, teams must go to Boney Island. While paddling there, Peter is in a boat with Harold and Duncan, and Peter asks what he can do to apologize to Courtney. It feels like every time he makes any headway with her, they're reset back to level 1. Duncan says to stop beating himself up. She appreciates you. She also just kinda hates you for the things you've messed up. Peter says exactly. Come on, Duncan, you spend a lot of time with her. Surely you have something. Duncan says sorry, dude. Maybe winning will help. She's fickle. She'll stop hating you as soon as someone else messes up. Peter in confessional says normally that would be a great plan, but he feels like the universe only wants to make him suffer. Who knows if he can go through one challenge without making a mistake. During the challenge, Peter does really well, helping out the group, and despite his scrawny frame, people take notice of how easily he's carrying firewood for the fire making part of the challenge. Harold throws all the team's ores into the fire, and in confessional, Peter says he would have preferred someone else to mess up, but he thinks that the target is off of his back. When coming up with solutions on how to get back, Peter says someone can push them back to shore until Courtney asks who, because his scrawny arms won't be able to get them back to shore. Peter asks if DJ can do it, and after some prodding, DJ agrees to help. As a result, the Bass are saved from elimination. Peter gets Harold, Eva, Katie, and Sadie and proposes an alliance. Eva is a bit hesitant at first, but agrees to not vote any of them as long as they don't mess anything up. Peter says great, we'll all be on our best behavior. On the Gophers, Heather ends up voting off Trent to keep Gwen and Trent separated. Episode 9 is the paintball deer hunt challenge. Peter would be a deer and Heather would actually try harder in this challenge, wanting to see if Peter really is gifted. Beth fires a bullet at Peter and Peter ducks over, intending not to look suspicious, tying his shoes. He then runs off and Beth asks if she wants to chase after him, and Heather says no, get me some chips from Chef's pantry. Later on during the challenge, Peter sees Cody with the bear that mauls him in cannon, and Peter throws a rock at the bear, telling Cody to get out of here. The bear rushes at Peter and Peter jumps over it to dodge a swipe before seeing Cody is still there and knowing he can't just web the bear. Peter says sorry bear, but he has places to be. He begins to run and the bear chases after him. Cody in confessional says that was so cool of him, he doesn't know how far he'll get, but he owes a lot to Peter. Without Lashana being there to shoot Heather, the mutiny will exist but won't lead to the Gophers losing intrinsically. The Gophers still end up losing because there's no way that the Gophers catch DJ or Peter, but they do a lot better than in canon. In the end, at elimination, Heather makes a deal with Cody that he can stay over Beth as long as he votes with them. Cody agrees only because he has a new mission to pay Peter back for helping him. As a result, Beth is eliminated. In the cooking challenge in episode 10, Peter won't have much room to help here. He won't be the best cook on the team, and so they have him retrieve the ingredients instead and just make sure nothing burns. Duncan tells Peter that he doesn't want to bully Harold, but if he doesn't get his panties off the floor, he'll be forced to do what he does best. Peter tries to talk to Harold, but Harold is stubborn and adamant that they aren't his, and so Peter gives Duncan permission to do what he needs with the stipulation that he doesn't go too far with it. Duncan says that interrogating sometimes needs to bridge some ethical boundaries. This makes Peter worried and feeling guilty. In the end, the Gophers still lose because of Owen eating most of their food and failing on the dessert section of the meal. As a result, at elimination, Owen is eliminated. Episode 11 is the trust building challenge, where round 1 goes the same as in canon with Gophers winning. Round 2 goes similarly, with the only difference being Cody being poisoned instead of Trent, and so the Bass win. In round 3, Sadie messes up by shooting Courtney even after the challenge is over, and in round 4, the Bass win while the Gophers lose, meaning the tiebreaker event still occurs and the Gophers win their first challenge due to a technicality. Poor Peter just doesn't compete in this challenge. Peter wants to get DJ out due to how he got so depressed over thinking that his bunny died that he stopped trying, while Courtney's side of the alliance wants to get rid of Sadie for pummeling her with apples. If Eva votes their way, the vote ties. Unfortunately, Eva votes for Sadie, and Peter knows that his plans for an alliance have now fully fallen through. Peter asks Eva what happened, and Eva asks if he remembers their terms. Sadie messed up, so she got voted out. Simple as that. In episode 12, it's Chef's boot camp. Harold tells Peter that he needs to lose. Peter asks what he means. If they lose, that means they're picked off one by one. Harold says to trust him, he has a plan. Peter says fine, he'll play along. During the final part of the challenge, when he faces off against Gwen, Peter falls off, apologizing to the rest of the team for falling short. At elimination, Harold rigs the votes to go against Courtney, and as she leaves, Peter almost immediately knows something went wrong. For as much as he hated Courtney, he never wanted something like this. In episode 13, Peter asks Harold why he rigged the votes, and Harold says that if they didn't, they would have been picked off by Merge. Peter says they don't play unfairly like that. How can he trust Harold after this. Harold says to come on, they're in an alliance. Peter says no, not anymore. You tell them or I will. In round 1 of the challenge, DJ wins a point for the bass while Cody lands in the dirt and breaks his bones, but these are comedic injuries and not real ones, so he'll be fine by next episode. In round 2, Gwen holds onto the moose long enough to win a point for the Gophers while Jeff gets thrown off. In round 3, the same events occur almost verbatim, with Harold losing for the bass after seeing Heather's breasts, and Duncan loses to Lindsay because Lindsay, when motivated, is number 1 in the verse. As a result, bass are sent to elimination and Harold admits that he rigged the votes. Duncan and Eva both wanting to kill Harold, but Peter stands up to them both and tells them that they can vote him off, but he won't let them hurt him. Duncan pushes Peter over, but Peter stands back up to protect Harold and the two back off, realizing they won't get anything out of this. Harold thanks Peter and Peter says it's his reward for owning up to it. He's sorry he can't protect him from Courtney. Harold realizes this to be the case as he's eliminated, and now Harold has to worry about something else entirely. In episode 14, this will be a team challenge because otherwise I will have to make episode 23 an elimination episode, and I don't want to cover that filler, so I'd rather just make this more entertaining challenge and elimination episode. The killer bass have more manpower, but this is one of the few challenges where having extra manpower is a detriment, as this is the brunch of disgustingness, a challenge revolving around eating disgusting food. Bridget and Katie both are not adding much to the killer bass, but luckily Cody also is holding back the Gophers. In the end, it's Gwen versus Eva on the cockroach eating tiebreaker, and despite eating more, Eva can't hold all the cockroaches down and it comes back up, giving Gwen the win by default as a result, so the bass will have to go to elimination. Duncan grabs Peter and the other guys and says he wants a guys alliance at merge. Right now they're outnumbered. Peter says he's down for an alliance. As a result, at elimination, Eva is eliminated. Eva saying she gets what's going on. I help you through all of pre-merge and this is the thanks I get. I'm not done. I'll be back to pay all of you back. Peter in confessional says he's tired of hearing that line at this point. It never means anything good for him. In episode 15, the campers are told that some contestants are coming back, the first one being Izzy and the second being Courtney. Cody is beaming as he sees Peter again, and Peter says, hey, Corey, was it? Cody says it's Cody, but he doesn't blame him for forgetting him. Hey, why don't we tell the others about how you saved me? They'd surely keep you longer if they knew just how much of an asset you are. Peter says, no, you can't. I mean, I don't want to look like too much of a threat. Can I trust you with this, Cody? Cody says, of course. Courtney asks Duncan if he's happy to see her, and Duncan says of course he is. Duncan in confessional says this sucks, he wants to be with Courtney, but he has a good thing going with the guys alliance, and if he starts making an exception for Courtney, everyone will want their girls to be safe as well. Besides DJ and Peter, neither of them are dating anyone, so maybe they're a bit more useful than Jeff. Cody would probably want Gwen to stay, so I think I can make this work. Heather tells Courtney that she's glad she's here. Courtney says to cut the chit chat, we both know we hate each other's guts. Alliance? Heather says totally. In confessional, Heather says she has no plans of being in an alliance with Courtney for long, but she can get me some info about Duncan because there's a thing going on between them. The challenge is a Say Uncle challenge where teams will get painful challenges, and if they say Uncle, they lose. Peter may have good acrobatic abilities, but unfortunately some of these challenges require him to get hurt, and some of these challenges are the type of pain that would be used in the introduction of a new villain, so unfortunately or fortunately depending on your interpretation, Peter doesn't win the challenge. Instead, Courtney wins due to her willpower. Courtney gathers the other girls and Heather brings up the idea of eliminating Peter, but Courtney says they should get rid of Jeff, especially after they've seen that they can beat Peter. Jeff is still a jury threat regardless of whether he wins or not. The guys want to target Bridget, and at elimination they find out they aren't the only ones forming alliances, as Jeff is eliminated and Bridget tells Jeff that she didn't vote for him and Jeff says he didn't vote for her either. The two kiss goodbye as Duncan in confessional says he's so screwed now. This is why he has to stop playing for love. It gets you eliminated in these games. Courtney tells Duncan that if he wants to stay, all he has to do is play by her rules. Duncan says fine, he'll play. In confessional, he says that he was wrong. Love just gave him another lifeline. In episode 16, the guys are all talking about what they'll do now, and Duncan says they need to get some girls into their guys alliance. Peter says he actually came up with some ideas. First option, Bridget. They just got rid of Jeff. She probably wants revenge. Duncan says he'd try to get Courtney, but he doubts she will be down for it. For now, he will just have her tell him who they're voting for so he can prepare for the tiebreaker. DJ says he will get Bridget. Cody says he can try getting Gwen. He knows that she will join with the promise of getting rid of Heather. The challenge ultimately doesn't matter as Heather wins due to getting the key that is a winner, and so the guys wish to get rid of Izzy while the girls want to get rid of Cody. Izzy is voted out and Courtney now knows there's some traitors to the alliance, while Heather in confessional says that this is just what she expected. She just has to make sure she keeps her immunity and she won't leave. In episode 17, contestants play hide and seek where you can either win immunity by outlasting Chef, making it to the safe zone, or finding someone else. Peter hangs from a stalactite in a cave and sees Duncan enter, looking at the photos as Heather enters shortly after. She sees Duncan looking at the photos and asks what that's about, and Duncan says it's nothing. Heather says, come on, I don't care if you like superheroes, just show it. Duncan shows off the photos and Heather looks at them and says, "Oh, Spider-Boy or whatever." Duncan says, "Man, it's Spider-Man. He's really cool, you know." Heather asks where he got these, and Duncan says Peter gave them to him. Heather points out that he looks a little scrawny for Spider-Man, right? Duncan looks at the photos for a second before throwing them onto the ground and storming out. Heather grabs them and looks at them before saying, "No, it can't be. Peter can't possibly be Spider-Man. That's a conspiracy theory too outlandish for even her. But how does Peter even have these? These angles look impossible to get." Peter in confessional says, "This blows. First, Duncan thinks I lied to him. Second, I really have to do arms at the gym." Heather catches Lindsay to win immunity, and Courtney hides underwater, thinking that Chef won't check it, which proves to be right as Courtney is able to make it to the safe zone to win immunity. Peter outlasts everyone to the point where Chef just stops searching without any fanfare. Peter says that he guesses he can either be a winner or someone who gets recognized. Peter goes into the cabin knowing there are no cameras in there, and Duncan goes in slightly after. Duncan asks Peter who the hell he thinks he is. Peter says, Peter Parker? Duncan says, "Yeah, but you tried to pull a fast one on me. You're dead, Peter." Peter says, "Wait, he can explain." Duncan says, "No, you want to cosplay, do it on your own time and don't try and rope." Peter shoots a web at Duncan, and Duncan tries to pull the doorknob, asking what this stuff is. Peter says it's web fluid, the stuff he uses for his webs. Duncan says, "No, this is just some kid's toy stuff. He's sure of it." Courtney asks why this door is closed. "Duncan, are you in here?" Peter says, "Nope, he went to confessional the last time he saw him." Courtney says, "Great, right before elimination 2. She leaves, and Duncan says, "Fine, let's say you are Spider-Man. Why didn't you tell me earlier? And isn't taking photos of yourself a bit egotistical?" Peter says, "You say it's egocentric, I say it's a good business decision." About why I didn't tell you? Well, I didn't know if I could trust you not to tell anyone else. Duncan says, "Dude, I went to juvie. Rule 1 is not to snitch." Peter says, "Fair point. We cool?" Duncan says, "I guess so, but no more secrets." Peter says, "Yeah, of course. Now who are we getting rid of?" At elimination, Duncan is eliminated, and all the guys are shocked as Heather in confessional says that Courtney's not the only one with a brain. When Courtney left, I knew she was going to talk with Duncan, so instead I told the girls that we were voting off Duncan. Gwen was the hardest one to convince, but she budged after threatening to flip it onto her. Bridget wanted revenge on Duncan for Jeff's elimination anyway. This game is in the bag. Peter tells Duncan he'll see him later, and Duncan says this ain't it for him. He'll be back at some point, and maybe this time it'll be to do something good. Peter in confessional says that he loves helping people. He just wished that it happened at points that didn't correspond to their elimination. He really is feeling wary of getting to know people when they keep leaving immediately after. In episode 18, it would be the bike building challenge. Peter catches on to Chris's wording saying that the last person to cross is eliminated and realizes that the only penalty being listed is to compete. Instead, Peter tells Cody that they need to ditch the challenge. Cody asks what they'll do if they get punished, and Peter says that is a possibility, but does he want to take that chance? Cody says fair enough. Lindsay ends up placing last and is eliminated from the competition for placing last. Lindsay tells Katie to give Heather a piece of her mind. Cody says that he can't believe Peter got that right, and Peter says to always read the fine print. It's a good thing we did too. It looks like Heather put a major target on her back. In episode 19, DJ eliminates himself from the competition like before, but Peter is able to beat Chef as the killer, dressing as Spider-Man in the cabin and using his webbing to stop Chef before going back into the cabin and taking his clothing off. Realizing he can't actually tell anyone he did this, so he'll just hide in the cabin until it's over. Heather would know that it has to be Peter, however. He was the only man who hadn't been caught by that point, and it works out too well. As a result, she asks Chris if she can print out some photos of the footage, and Chris says fine, but you're paying for the ink. Heather says fine with her, she's winning this thing anyway. DJ is eliminated from the competition the same way as in canon, while Gwen wins immunity for beating the real killer on the island. In episode 20, contestants have to capture animals, and the first one to bring one back wins the reward. Peter has to capture a frog, saying that this would be so much easier if he could just trap it to the ground. He sets up some traps but is ultimately still outsmarted by the frog, while Gwen manages to make it with her animal first. Before the vote, Heather says to look at these photos, proof that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Courtney asks if she hit her head. There's no way Peter is Spider-Man. Heather says she thought that as well, but it just makes too much sense. Where did he go after he beat the killer? He didn't leave the cabin. The only one who left was Peter, and what's that under his shirt? Looks like a web design. Bridget says that if he's truly a superhero, then they don't stand a chance against him, and Heather says right, that's why we need to get rid of him at the vote tonight. Peter gets Cody into the cabin and tells him that this is probably his last night here. There's no way that he can remain with only him as an ally. Gwen asks if he's counting his chickens too early, and Katie and Gwen are both there willing to help. Peter says great, they'll for sure send Heather packing. Katie says before I do anything, I want to know the truth. Are you Spider-Man? Cody says come on, he's impressive, but he's not. Peter says that he got bit by a radioactive spider and it gave him these powers. He is Spider-Man, but he's also Peter Parker. Surely you can understand why I've been keeping a secret, because now you're all looking at me like I'm some kind of freak. Gwen says come on, we're all freaks. All of us were outcasts. Just so happen the coolest one is also in this group. Let's get rid of Heather before thinking about betraying our own. At elimination, Heather is voted out, and Heather says wait, you'd keep the Spider-Man over me? Gwen says, surprisingly, we like him more than you. Katie says, yeah, remember Lindsay. Cody says that Peter saved him from a bear and the last challenge. Heather says, fine, you guys are weak, and if you lose, it's gonna be because you were too stupid to eliminate Peter when you had the chance. Peter tells Cody it was really cool of them to do that for him, and he appreciates Cody sticking by him for so long. Cody asks what he'll do if he wins, and Peter says he'll probably give his aunt the money. She's in debt, and so he really needs the money to help her out. Cody in confessional says he was just planning on buying a new keyboard, but Peter really does need this. Guess being a superhero isn't all fun like he thought. Episode 21 is the Tri-Arm Triathlon. Teams are Peter and Courtney, Cody and Bridget, and Gwen and Katie. Courtney tells Peter that he's pretty smart, they should be in an alliance together. Peter says he's fine, but he won't throw the challenge. Courtney says that's all she can ask for. Courtney and Peter win round 1 where they have to eat as fast as possible. Gwen and Katie win round 2 after Gwen and Katie argue on the beach of Boney Island, both of them realizing they're both outcasts in their own way, and Gwen just needs to own up to it. During part 3, Cody and Bridget win, so anyone can be eliminated tonight. Peter and Courtney not winning part 3 because despite their intelligence they argued about the elimination order and as such couldn't solve the puzzle in time. Bridget and Courtney team up together to vote out Peter due to being the biggest threat, while Cody and Peter want to vote out Courtney. As a result, it all comes down to Gwen and Katie. In the end, it's a 4-2 vote. The contestant leaving is Peter. Peter says that really sucks, but he's happy to have been here. Cody asks Gwen why'd she do that? He needed the money for his aunt. Gwen says, oh crap, and as he's leaving, Gwen and Cody tell him that if they win, they'll give him their winnings. Peter says no, he can't accept that, but as he sees how adamant the two are, he budges and says fine, I'll take a percentage but not the full thing. In episode 22, eliminated contestants get to vote out who leaves. This would be a great opportunity for a vote, if not for the canon route where Sadie kickstarts a chain reaction of one person's name being said, and this time it would be Katie, so Katie leaves instead of Courtney, who basically everyone wanted to get rid of. In episode 24, the teams will be Gwen and Cody versus Courtney and Bridget. First team back to camp wins. Gwen and Cody get stuck on a cliff and see Bridget and Courtney racing to the finish, only for Cody to have built a hang glider, and he tells Gwen he needs to trust him, and Gwen reluctantly does so, the two soaring through the air until it breaks and begins descending, crashing into Bridget and Courtney where Cody's hand is touching the totem pole, and so Gwen and Cody win the challenge. At elimination, Chef decides to vote out Bridget, saying that he just likes the fight in Courtney more. Gwen and Cody agree to help each other in the final 3 to get rid of Courtney. In episode 25 for the Triple Dog Dare challenge, they make Courtney suffer in the same way the canon final 3 made Heather suffer. However, Courtney is far more durable mentally than Heather, and so she does nearly every challenge with a desire to win that eclipses Gwen and Cody. After a while, Cody tells Gwen to dare him on a hard dare. Gwen says she can't do that, but Cody interrupts and says he knows that, but he can't beat Courtney. He doesn't want to give up, but the more time goes on, the weaker she'll get too, and Courtney will be able to take us both out at that point. Gwen gets a dare to drink from the toilet, and she dares Cody to do it, Cody rejecting it, and so he is eliminated. Courtney in confessional says it's a good thing they didn't dare her, she would have easily finished it all. To win the money, of course, she isn't doing it for fun. The finale is here. Courtney supporters are Duncan, Heather, Jeff, Bridget, Izzy, DJ, with the rest being Gwen supporters. In the finale, Peter and Cody make a trap out of webs where if she steps on it, it will act as a snare. Tyler holds the rope for it and needs to pull it when the time is right. Tyler saying this is a lot of pressure for a guy who got eliminated second. Tyler times it exactly right, Courtney being caught in the snare, but Duncan throws Courtney his pocket knife and Courtney cuts herself free before running to the finish line, and in a buzzer beater ending, both dive out, but Courtney lands past the line while Gwen is mere centimeters away from it. Courtney kisses Duncan, telling everyone to take that. Heather says that she charges a 50% helper's fee, only for Courtney to tell her to buzz off before she gets her lawyers on her. Heather says fine, whatever, God forbid someone wants to be your friend. Tyler says that he thought he did it right, but he messed up. Peter says no, sometimes things just don't go right despite your best intentions, you did your job perfectly. Gwen is disappointed, but Trent's there for her. Gwen apologizes to Peter, she fell short when it mattered. Peter says hey, it's alright, I don't know if I'd have accepted the money anyway, and Aunt May most certainly would have given you strife over it. Besides, I'm going into next season not looking unbeatable. I mean, everyone can vote me off whenever they want, which will lull them into a false sense of security. Gwen says wow, that's cutthroat, she has to come back to see that. Peter says he hopes so, he had a lot of fun. Peter walks away but mutters an apology to Aunt May, he couldn't bring it home for her. And this has been Can Peter Parker Win Total Drama Island? What did you think? Special thanks to John for commissioning this what if, and until next time, have the day you deserve.